Let me ask you something. Should the U.S. Constitution be a fixed anchor, holding us tight to the principles of 1787, or should it be more like a sail, catching the winds of change to navigate the future? This very question, believe it or not, is at the heart of one of America's biggest legal debates, and the main battleground is a bunch of essays written way, way back.
We're talking, of course, about the Federalist. And yeah, the name might sound like something you'd find in a dusty old history book, but these essays are right at the center of a modern fight for the very soul of the Constitution.
So the big question is, why? I mean, why are we still fighting over these things? At the end of the day, they were just newspaper op-eds, written to try and convince New Yorkers to ratify the Constitution. Well, the answer is actually pretty wild.
Because, you see, the influence of the Federalist isn't fading away, it's exploding. Just look at this. Back in the 1940s, the Supreme Court mentioned it in only 15 cases. Fast forward to the 1990s, and that number just skyrockets to 67. The truth is, these essays are more relevant in our courts today than they've been for most of American history. So if we want to understand our legal battles now, we have to understand this text.
But here's the thing. A lot of what we think we know about it is just plain wrong. So before we dive into the modern fight, let's bust a few myths and uncover some of the secrets hiding behind these famous essays.
All right, first up, the name itself. We all call it the Federalist Papers, right? But that's a misnomer. The original newspaper runs and even the first books were just titled The Federalist. It's a small detail, sure, but it's our first clue that the story we all know isn't quite the whole story.
And how many essays are there? You're probably thinking 85. Nope, not originally anyway. Hamilton, Madison, and Jay actually wrote 84 essays for the newspapers. That 85 number we see in all the books today, that happened because a publisher, with Hamilton's okay, split one of the longer essays into two for the book version.
And what about the guys who wrote it? We learn it was Hamilton, Madison, and Jay. But as scholar Jacob Cook points out, it's way more accurate to say it was Hamilton and Madison with, the assistance of John Jay. Jay wrote the first few, then he got sick. After writing just one more, he got hit by a brick during a riot. You can't make this stuff up. That pretty much put a stop to his contributions. But here it is, the biggest shocker of them all. For a text that we now hold up as this foundational document of American government, its original journey was anything but successful. In fact, it was a spectacular failure. See, the whole point of the Federalist, its primary mission, was to get New York voters to elect pro-Constitution delegates for the state's ratification convention. That was the one job they had. And on that front, they failed, miserably. The numbers really don't lie. When all the votes were counted, New Yorkers sent a measly 19 pro-Constitution delegates to the convention. And the other side? 46 anti-Constitution delegates. The very people they were writing for took one look at their arguments and went, nah.
So how in the world did this political dud become a legal icon? Well, it's because almost right away, people recognized its sheer brilliance. Even Thomas Jefferson, who was their political rival, had to admit it was, quote, the best commentary on the principles of government which was ever written. The essays may have failed to persuade, but they succeeded as timeless political philosophy. And what makes that even more incredible is the insane pressure these guys were under. Madison later said that sometimes the printer would literally be setting the type for the beginning of an essay while the end of that same essay was still being written. This wasn't some calm, scholarly project. This was high-speed, high-stakes thinking on the fly. And it was that frantic, brilliant writing that created a text so rich with ideas that today it's used to justify two completely opposite ways of reading the Constitution. And that brings us right back to the modern battle raging at the heart of American law. On one side, you have Originalism, which says the Constitution's meaning is fixed. And on the other, you have living Constitutionalism, which argues its meaning has to evolve.
So, Originalists have two core beliefs. First, the meaning of the Constitution's words was set in stone the moment they were written. And second, that original meaning should bind us today. The whole point is to keep judges from just making things up based on their own opinions. This is the anchor view we talked about. But living constitutionalism argues the exact opposite. It says, hey, constitutional law isn't static. It can, and it should change as society changes. We should apply those enduring principles to new, modern challenges. The idea here is to avoid being ruled by the dead hand of the past. This is our sail. Now, this might sound like a debate just for law professors, right? But how a judge reads the Federalist and the Constitution has massive, real-world consequences for every single one of us.
I mean, the arguments in the Federalist were so on point,
They basically predicted some of the most powerful court rulings in American history. They were already debating the court's power to strike down laws, its authority over state courts, and whether you can even sue a state. These aren't just abstract theories. This is the bedrock of American law that affects everything from healthcare to free speech today.
So we're left with this brilliant foundational text and a huge conflict over how to read the very Constitution it was written to defend. Which brings us right back to our first question. Is the Constitution an anchor, keeping us grounded in the original ideas of the founding? Or is it a sail, designed to be adapted by new generations to navigate uncharted waters? The Federalist gives ammo to both sides, and how we answer that question doesn't just define our laws, it defines who we are as a nation.